Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Adam Miller. I am the Assistant Director of Event Operations here at the University of California, Merced's Enrollment Management Team. On behalf of everyone behind the screens tonight, we'd like to welcome you to tonight's webinar on everything you need to know to prepare for move-in this fall. I'm joined by many of my colleagues, both on screen and behind the screen here to answer any of your questions. The one thing that we do ask is please refrain from asking your questions through the Q&A panel located at the bottom center portion of your screen until after we have completed the presentation. We will have plenty of time for you to ask all of your questions of us, and we will be here until we answer all of your questions. Also, a little bit of housekeeping procedures. If you do need to adjust the volume of the webinar, that is located in the bottom center portion of your screen, right next to the Q&A panel. Again, my name is Adam Miller. We welcome you to tonight's webinar. It is also my great pleasure to join one of my colleagues, Scott Lepla, to the webinar tonight to start the presentation. Welcome, Scott.
Hi, thanks, Adam. And I'm grateful to be here and grateful to have the opportunity to talk to folks about move-in housing for fall 2022. My name is Scott Lepla, and I am the Interim Director of Housing Services at UC Merced. I'm going to be going through an overview of the move-in process to give folks who are coming to join us this fall, whether you're a continuing student or a new student. This will be an opportunity to get a sense for what the move-in process is going to look like, how you can prepare yourself for success on those days to have the best move-in experience you can. And then we'll answer some common questions about what to bring and how to prepare yourself to live on campus for fall. We're just to touch base. We're going to talk about things you can do before you even get in the car that will help you be successful. We'll talk about the check-in process, parking and unloading, and then what to expect on campus while you're on campus for move-in days. The move-in days that we're going to be focusing on are going to be August 18th, Thursday, August 18th through Sunday, 21st. During those days, most of the campus population will move in on those days between 8:30 a.m. and 4:30 p.m. That's when we run our larger operations each day. We'll talk about how you can schedule your move-in time, and we'll talk about there are some other processes or folks that are coming at different times. We'll touch on those and how and who that affects. So to get started, one of the first things to do is schedule your move-in time. In the past, so if some of you we have got some continuing students joining us. This is not just first years, but continuing students. We've always, until last year, we sent out your time and we told you when to come, and then we had to kind of go this back and forth about, kind of change my time, et cetera. And so we started piloting this last fall and spring schedule your own move-in times. And so you can do that on the housing portal. So this is where you turned in your housing application, where you submitted it. You can see on the image here, right on the home page, there's a section that says click here to schedule. There's a link that's actually link text there. And you can click on that link and it will take you into a scheduling portal in the housing portal. So you'll choose your application term and then it'll take you to a place where you can schedule your move-in time. The move-in times are all first come, first serve. There's an initial distribution of times and you can kind of pick which day from Thursday to Sunday from 8:30. And then there's some times that go even later. We have some times out until I think like 7:30 or 8 o'clock at night. If you know you're going to come late, if you're coming far. And you can pick those times through the portal. You can also cancel and reschedule them as you need to. So if something changes or your plans change, you don't have to go back and forth with housing like you used to in the past. You just get on the portal, change your move-in time, find a new one that works, and you can reschedule and go. Now we ask that you try to stay in the arrival window that you pick, because if you look at the times, they all are 15 minutes apart. Now this doesn't mean that you have 15 minutes to move all your stuff to your room. It just means that for the part of check-in where you arrive and come and get your keys, we try to stagger everybody's arrival by about 15 minutes because we're trying to pace out anywhere from 800 to 1,200 people a day between the start of move-in and the end of move-in that day. And so that 15 minutes helps pace and spread everyone out over the course of the day. So if you please try to stay in your arrival window. But if you run into traffic coming up to the Grapevine out of LA or something and you run into issues, it's not we're not going to be checking attendance if you have a 10:15 move-in time and you get there at 10:27. But if or you get there a little later, don't worry about it. We just get there, try to stay as close to your time as you can. And then hopefully things will shake themselves out as we go through the day. But that's how you schedule your time. Periodically, we may add additional times as we watch times fill up, and people will cancel times. So as they maybe choose to live off campus, or they do make different choices about what they want to do for the fall, or they change their own move-in day, new times might move up. So that if you look for a time now and get one scheduled, but it's not your ideal time, you can always go back later and try to schedule it a different time later. Another thing about before you leave is making sure that you've got the right stuff. So things to bring. Well, let me point out the QR code in the upper right-hand corner will take you to the website where I'm referencing this information. There's a PDF download that's there too, that's helpful. But I'm going to give you some things. There's some information here that may be a little bit supplemental that's not on there. So a little bonus for coming to the session. The big thing is that we don't provide bedding. So that first night after you unpack all your stuff, put it there, you want to make sure you've got some sheets for the bed, a pillow, and some blankets. It may be hot outside, but it'll be between 72 and 74 in those rooms because we keep all the temperatures there. So you're going to want some bedding, some blankets. And I generally recommend bringing some sheets and then some one or two blankets in case, because you're going to need them for the fall when it starts getting cooler in September at night. But it's twin extra long. That's the size that we need for the sheets. About every bed we have is twin extra long. So that's what you're going to need. I also recommend that you bring medications if you have prescription medications that are important, bring those. If you have your own private insurance, if you're not using student insurance, or you have particular services that you need health insurance stuff for, talk about that with your providers. Make sure you have the information you need to get care in the community. If you're not going to be using the student health center, of course you can use it, but if you know you have needs that you're working on, you want to try to plan those out in advance. And particularly around the medications, start planning about what's your first refill is going to look like if you're going to be here. It's much easier to plan that out in advance and try to get that set up now than trying to do it over the phone with your support system, trying to figure that out while you're trying to go to class. If you're going to be looking for a job, make sure you bring the things that you need to get a job. If you look for I-9 documents online, you can see a listing of the kinds of records that are necessary. If you're looking for a job, you're going to need those documents to get on payroll. And so it's helpful to have them to expedite your employment on campus. Each dresser, everybody gets 4 drawers or two stackable dressers. And the top drawer has a hasp where you can put a lock on it for each of those. So I generally recommend bringing like 2 small locks. They don't have to be like giant padlocks, just a regular combination lock that you might use at the high school locker or a gym. Doesn't have to be fancy, but I recommend grabbing 2, one so you can secure stuff in your room, and a drawer that you might put those things like your important medications, other things, secure those. But there are other places on campus you might take stuff. For example, if common bathrooms have lockers in them, where you can put phones or other things that you take. If you want to secure some stuff in there, you can lock things up while you're in the shower. The other place that's important is if you go to the gym, you want to like put some stuff in the gym, they have lockers there. You can just use that second lock for that. So 2 small locks are helpful. You're going to have to take care of your own hygiene. Make sure you bring things like deodorant. I mean, I don't say it to be mean, but sometimes people will just forget, right? Because they're so used, it's like so much in the background at home. But just kind of walk through your daily routine, make notes about what you're using on a regular or weekly basis, and bring those things. That includes supplies to do laundry. So a way to get the laundry from your room down to the laundry room, and then a way to like some detergent to do the laundry. You won't need any quarters or anything. The laundry is all free to access for campus residents, so you don't need any extra money for that, but you will need the supplies to do your own laundry. And particularly for first-year students, I recommend bringing a long charging cord for your phone, or a portable battery that you could use to charge your phone, because this year almost most students on South Campus will be in a top bunk, either a top bunk or a lofted bed, because we're going to loft a 3rd bed in the triples, and that's the predominant style of room in El Portal, Granite Pass, Glacier Point, and Sentinel Rock. So having some way, if you're going to have your phone up there using it as an alarm, having some way to charge it while you're asleep could be helpful without, and the outlet might be, a long way away. So those are some things to consider bringing with you. Some things to leave at home, just leave all your kitchen appliances at home. We don't really have a lot of accessible kitchens in the residence halls to use. So even if you had the appliance with you, you're really not going to have an opportunity to use it on a regular basis. That includes things like kettles, hot plates, Basically, anything that generates a lot of heat when you turn it on is going to be a no-go. We work on this with Cal Fire, and they've reviewed it. And each year, we find we go through the rooms usually in the middle of the semester with Cal Fire, and we find all kinds of non-conforming items that need to go home. So just save yourself the trouble. Don't bring those items at all. Don't bring any weapons, no brass knuckles, batons, other things like that for personal defense or stuff like that. You could have knives, but it can be up to 3.5 inches long. That's max. So basically like a little pocket knife. You can't have some kitchen knives if you need a kitchen knife for something, but in general, that's described in our policy. So if you're wondering about what you can bring for personal safety, the housing handbook is going to be a place where you can get more descriptions on what your kinds of things you are or aren't allowed to have. Pets and animals, don't bring those. The only pet that everyone's allowed to have is a fish in a 10-gallon tank or less. That's the only kind of blanket approval for a pet. Everything else is prohibited. Now, if you have a service animal, meaning you have a dog or a miniature horse that is trained to provide some kind of specific service for you, that's the definition of a service animal. For those two animals, you can bring the service animal. Other animals can be approved as emotional support animals, but that has to be done in advance through the student accessibility services, and you'll need to provide documentation for that. Do not bring the animal to campus until you have the documentation. Don't bring any candles or incense or the things that you light on fire for obvious reasons. Those are a no-go. And additionally, don't bring any Wi-Fi routers. You won't need them. We provide high-speed wireless in all the residence halls. And though the radio signal that comes out of there, if you bring your own Wi-Fi router, the only place that even work would be North Campus, where you can plug into Ethernet. And even then, the Wi-Fi router is going to interfere. Your personal one can interfere with the signal for everyone else and degrade the overall quality of the internet experience. On South Campus, there aren't any Ethernet ports, so there's no place really for you to plug that in or to use it to kind of relay that. But so just it's not really, you're not going to get a lot of benefit out of it. So don't bring it, and it certainly can hinder everybody else's experience as well. What you can bring for appliances in each room, and then if I've got continuing sense on here, this is different than in past years. So each room is allowed one 900-watt Energy Star microwave per room, right? So you get one in the room. So single all the way up to quad, you get one of those 900-watt Energy Star rated microwaves or less, right? So no giant hand-me-down microwave from like Uncle Jeff that's trying to unload stuff while you go to college, right? It's got to be, that's generally a pretty small microwave, and it's not really going to be one that you're going to cook up a lot of meals in. It's going to be mainly for reheating things that are designed for the microwave. The change this year is that you can bring one 4.2 cubic feet refrigerator per every 2 roommates. That's a little bit different in the past. We used to say 1 per room, but in working with Cal Fire, the residence education coordinators worked pretty diligently to get this set up so that if you have 1 or 2 people in your bedroom, you can bring one 4.2 cubic foot refrigerator for those persons. If you're in a triple or a quad, you can have up to 2 refrigerators as long as there's 3 or 4 people assigned to that room. You can't have 3. If you're in a Valley Terraces suite with 3 bedrooms, that means at most you're going to have 3 refrigerators. It doesn't matter where you put it. You get 1 refrigerator for every 2 people. So if you have a common area or a suite, you can put 1 out there, but it just means there can't be 1 in the bedroom. It's only got to be only 1 for every 2 residents. So that's what to bring and what to leave to home. Again, the QR code will take you to a web page that has more information on that. You want to check your room assignment before you arrive, and you can do this through the housing portal. So continuing students, we used to send out a lot of emails about this is your room assignment, this is all this information. It's a giant email, had all this stuff to read. It's like a little novel, and in part because we want to make it accessible to you, provide it to you. We started posting your room assignments on your portal webpage, homepage, as well as the roommate assignment. And you can see those on the portal now. They've been visible since probably July 18th, 21st, somewhere in there. So you can see those room assignments. The vast majority of assignments are complete. We do have some students, and you may be on this call. If you don't have a room assignment yet, we are still trying to finalize some room assignments. As we get cancellations, we're putting folks into spaces, and we will have enough space for a bed for everybody that has a signed contract. But we will continue to make some room changes. And the way that we're making these room changes, we're continuously getting approved ADA accommodations. And those sometimes require us to move rooms, and we try to move roommates from one place to another to make that accommodation if we can, but we may not always be able to do that. So make sure if you have a roommate, for example, that disappears, they might have been reassigned to a different room to manage an ADA accommodation. So just note that your roommate group may change before you get to campus, and you want to double check that on the portal periodically to make sure that your room and room assignment are there. As we get them more finalized, we'll start sending emails when we change them. But we're still doing, I think we did like 100 and some changes over the last week. So we are really, we're still kind of we're still doing a lot of volume in that. So we're also doing a lot of corrections for gender placement. So everybody, when they applied to UC Merced, you had the option of choosing a gender identity marker for yourself. If you left that question blank, which was an option, then it would have come across in our system as you or unspecified gender. So there's a good number of students who I don't think really understood the impact of that. And so each year we place them in housing, generally with other students that had the same placement, but we don't always know for sure what the gender identity marker means for them. And so we try to reach out. We added the information to the application about, hey, if you've got this, you can change it, let us know. And some students have been letting us know that, hey, I really meant to be placed. I want, men as my roommates. And so we're going back and making those corrections with folks. And so that's another source of assignment changes. Then we are trying to honor the roommate requests as much as we can. We weren't always able to accommodate all of them at the beginning of the year through the allocation process, but we are still trying to go through and fix those where we have the opportunity to do so. There will be an opportunity in October. If you get here and you really are not happy with your room, you want to try to find a different style of room. In October, we'll have an elective room change process. We know we're going to have students who don't show up in September, and we're going to vacate those rooms when they don't arrive, and that'll open up some space for us to start moving people around. It's kind of like a big game of dominoes in October where people start moving around, and then we can start you can put in requests for a different type of room, and we can approve that and try to find a different room space. We can't always honor all of them during that time, but we can usually get a lot of folks reassigned during that time. This is what the booking summary looks like. I'm going to apologize up front for the font. I've been working with the vendor on this, but I can either make the font super tiny where you have to get a magnifying glass out to read it or zoom in on your screen like 500 times, or I could make it a normal size font and it comes out in this weird compressed way. So that's, it's on me as a system administrator, but it's kind of weird to read. But this will be your term over here. This is a sample piece of sample data. So over here, this will say fall 2022. And then it'll have your building, it'll have your room, it'll have your room type. This will be a single, double, triple, or quad. And then it'll have your check-in date and it'll have your check-out date. Now, what's important to know when you read this on the portal, the check-in date is not your scheduled arrival time. This is the data that we send over to your MyBill. So this information usually stays the same. We don't change that check-in date every time you electively change your move-in time. So those two things are decoupled. So you can change your arrival time through the portal, and that's what you should do. This check-in date is going to be August 20th for the vast majority of students. Almost all of you will have an August 20th check-in date, because that's how the assignment, that's how it follows the contract language that we use. So you have an assignment for fall from August 20th out to December 17th. And that's how all the billing is calculated for that time. But you can choose your own arrival time of August 18th. If you pick an August 18th arrival time, this value will not update. So just know that as long as you have a check-in time on the portal, you're great, you're good to go. Don't expect this value to change very much, but it will change for some. So if we do have some students who are going to be coming as part of early arrival processes, there are student employers on campus who are going to be who have asked to bring student employees back. And you may be one of those student employees on this call, or you might be part of a group that is returning early, like athletics. There are some folks with rec and athletics. Wilderness Week of Wilderness Welcome will be doing that as well. And as those folks are identified, we will adjust your assignments, and you'll get a new assignment that will allow you to come back early during these times for these dates. So that's one group, but this is generally a pretty small group, and most of you will probably already know who you are if you're trying to come back during this time. If you are participating as a move-in volunteer, or you're in the Afro Hall LLC, you'll be coming back on August 17th. And so you will see your move-in dates change on that screen. So on this screen here, you'll see these update to August 17th. They have not for move-in yet, but they have for Afro Hall LLC. And then again, if you're not in these first two groups, August 18th through the 21st is when you'll be scheduling your time and your schedule arrival time through the portal. We do make limited exceptions for international travel, long distance travel. So if you're flying and you can only get here on like August 16th because of travel and you have to do COVID testing and all these other things, you can use the QR code in the upper right-hand corner here. We also have information on our website, which we'll talk about later. They'll take you there. You can request early arrival. Early arrivals are not guaranteed because we are moving students out of summer housing and Half Dome. We have different work projects that are finishing up around campus. So we have to check your request date to make sure that your room is actually going to be available. And that's true for any student employees or anybody that's coming early, particularly in the August 6th to the 17 cluster. If you're asking to move in early there, we have to really check your assignment to make sure your room is actually going to be ready. So when we're going to switch pace now, we talked about things before campus. So making sure you can know when you're going to arrive, making sure that you've scheduled your move-in, making sure you know what to bring, what to leave at home. Now we're going to switch and talk about the move-in day, how we arrive on campus, where do we get our keys, how do we unload, and then where do we put our stuff, or how do we leave? This is the overview of move-in parking and unloading. So most folks, we generally recommend that you approach campus. Like if you come to campus to UC Merced, you can have two ways. You can come in on Bellevue Road, or you can come in on Lake Road. And we generally recommend coming in on Lake Road because your first stop for everyone is going to be parking here in the Bellevue lot. That's the first stop. Everyone goes to the first stop because that's where you get your keys. We'll talk about that in the next minute, next little bit here, but you're going to come in, you're going to park, you're going to go get your keys. Students, you're going to go to your room first, make sure your keys work, take your COVID test, which will be on your bed. When that's done, then you go back and you can start unloading from there. So everyone's going to be coming in and you're all going to be going to this area that's bounded by the green rectangle in the Bellevue lot. That's where everyone puts their car to begin. After you complete all those steps I just talked about, where you get your keys, you go to your room, take your COVID test, get your results, and then report your results and then come back, then you'll go and either move your car. If you're in El Portal, Sentinel Rock, Granite Pass, or Glacier Point, you're going to move your car into this unloading zone bounded by the yellow rectangle. You can see it up here kind of in the top of the screen. You'll move your car there and then unload. I'll show you why in a second, but this is the shortest path to get to all the buildings you need to get to. If you're on North Campus, in the Summits or Valley Terraces, Half Dome, Cathedral, Tenaya, any of the Valley Terraces buildings, you get back in your car and you can come back out here and we're going to go down to Scholars Lane. We're going to have parking along Scholars Lane. We're going to have parking in Scholars Lot. And there'll be some parking down called 45-degree parking, meaning nose-in parking. So there'll be areas designated for you to put your car. We're all going to have a good day if everybody remembers the purpose of unloading. So when you're allowed this kind of close access, plan in advance so you can get your stuff up to the room, get everything up to the room, secure it, come back, move your car before you start unpacking. So there's a tendency to want to get up there, start picking your bed, put your stuff in, start taking stuff out of boxes. That's great. You know, like if you know, you got a family member or a friend who's maybe a little like worn out or frustrated or something, and they're driving the car, you can have them go move back to this long-term parking area. But we want to get the car out of these loading zones so that we can make room for everyone else who's coming. Again, we've got anywhere from 800 to 1,200 people that are coming at any given day. So we want to try to keep these proximity zones moving. So, set a timer on your phone when you drop stuff off. Make sure you come back. Move your car out of these spaces. Don't spend a lot of time unpacking until your car is in long-term parking. So we've driven in on Lake Road here. We've put our car in the arrival lot, the Bellevue lot, long-term parking green rectangle. Now these dotted lines are pedestrian paths. So if I'm here in the arrival block, then I'm gonna walk past the plaza here. I'm gonna walk past the bookstore. I'm gonna go into the conference center. For first-year students, particularly if you met your parents at the end of orientation, this conference center is where you met up at the end of the day. If I've got parents on the call, that's where I was given the session on housing. That ballroom is where where students are gonna get their keys. There's also gonna be, if they need to get cat cards, we'll have cat cards there to hand out. And if there's any problems with cat cards, the card office is right across the way here on the lakeside. So this pedestrian path, you'll come over here before you unload anything out of the car. Come in here, get your keys. I recommend you need to go to your building, make sure your keys open your room, make sure you get sometimes you get the right key or the lock doesn't work and we have to send out somebody to help. But you can test that before you get everything moved out. Take your COVID test and then come back, and then we'll have carts available here to check out. We're going to talk about that next. These are going to be hydration stations. There'll be bottled water available because it's going to be hot. So we want to make sure that we try to provide enough water for you if you need it. These areas here, remember I talked about if you're in South Campus and you're unloading up here, these green dotted paths, these are the paths that you can go. All the openings, all the doors, all the elevators for Sentinel Rock, Granite Pass, and Glacier Point off Academic Walk. So you've got to bring your cart from here. You're going to roll it up this pedestrian path between El Portal and Sentinel Rock, and you'll go up and down Academic Walk as you need to. If you're in El Portal, you can actually just come right in here to the back side of the building, or you can come in the front side of the building. The elevators are kind of right at the junction of the two buildings in El Portal and the two wings. And so it's very easy to get to the elevator from either side. But if you're trying to go to Granite, Sentinel Rock, or Glacier Point, you're going to take this path. You're going to take Academic Walk to get, there's not really a back way in. So you've got your keys, you've checked out, you got your COVID test, everything, and that's all. We'll talk about getting your keys. So in the conference center, when you get to the conference center, the yellow, like this side, that's the part at the top here is the lake. So you've got the lake here at the top, Little Lake, and then Granite Pass is over here, and then down here on the other side of the athletic field at the bottom of the screen. So walk in like you're on that yellow dotted line. You'll come into the lobby, you'll hang a left, you'll go in here, and we're going to have your key stations where you're going to get your keys. You'll need your cat card. You can swipe, get your keys, and then we're going to have partners here. If you have questions, the Student First might be here for a couple of days, or we'll have information or other things that'll be available. We should have a hydration station in here as well. And then we're going to have some areas where if we have more, like if there's questions that we can't answer right away, or there's problems, we're going to have housing services. Myself and my team will be over here in this other section to help address some of those issues, so we can kind of keep things moving here. Once you get your keys, and if you need to go talk to any campus partners that are there, great. If not, you come back out of the ballroom, come back down this hallway. There's restrooms and water here, but there's these two rooms. This room is where we're going to have our carts. We're going to have 600 move-in carts. You can check out as many carts as you need, but we ask that you bring them back as soon as you're done with them, because 600 sounds like a lot, but if people are using them for an hour or 2 hours at a time, we run out of them pretty quickly. So you want to make sure as soon as you're done, bring them back and bring them back to this place. We're using the conference center this year because it's kind of right in the middle. So you don't have to go all the way to Alpine Room or all the way up to, we distributed out of the recycling center on South Campus last year. So this should be a lot more centralized for bringing carts to and from this place here. So you'll check them out, and then you can take your carts where you need to take them, where you can meet your car and unload your stuff. So the first part of that, right? So everything I talked about, like driving into campus, parking in the arrival lot, walking over, getting your keys, going get your stuff, that part can be relatively quick. There's not really a lot of lines for that. Like it might take a little while to get up to your room, but you can walk up the stairs if you need to. There'll be ways to get around the elevators depending on when you're there. That part is going to move pretty quickly. Where it's going to slow down is when you need to start rolling stuff in bins up into the elevators and up to the floors. So in general, we recommend that you try to pack light for this first trip. So you want to try to minimize. It's not about not bringing a lot of stuff. It's about making sure the stuff you have will fit into a standard laundry cart. And you try to minimize the number of trips you need to get the things that you have to your room. So like taking things out of boxes before you get here is helpful, because then you don't have to move that box up and down the stairs, right? You got to take it up there, get everything out of the box, and you got to bring the box back down and take the box to the recycling. You're just adding trips. And it's not so much that the elevators move quickly enough to get people through, but the more trips you have to make, the longer it's going to be. If you're looking at rolling your cart up here all the way down to the Granite Pass elevator or the Glacier Point elevator, each one of those trips is going to take a little while, especially if you're like on the 6th floor. So you want to make sure that you've thought about what you're going to bring, try to prepare stuff to make it as small as possible so you don't have to make as many trips. It's the trips that make things long. Make sure that you take your COVID self-test first. The newer strains of COVID we've had a lot of folks that are testing positive for COVID that aren't really showing a lot of symptoms, and that could be you. If you do test positive while on the self-test that we provide in the room, at least if you do it before you bring all your stuff, you can at least make a decision about whether you want to wait that out at home and come back later, or you can stay here if you need to, but you'll have to go into quarantine and isolation housing until we get you like thoroughly tested, or until you're no longer, until at the quarantine time frame. So it's definitely, we're not telling you to go to your room and to do a COVID test first because we want to, not trying to add obstacles, but I think it's really going to be in your self-interest to get that done before you start bringing all this stuff in, exposing yourself and other people that way. Just take the test, make sure it comes back. It'll take like 15 minutes. You can rest up. And then it's a pretty easy kit that you take on your own. But most of us have probably seen these already. But just do that before you start unloading so that you can, if you do test positive, you contact who you need to contact, then you can make decisions about what you want to bring in if you want to come back later. We'll hold your room all the way out until September. If you test positive and you stay positive, have symptoms, just, you can stay home. We're going to keep your room. We don't cancel your room if you don't show up by the first day of class. We usually hang on to those rooms until at least the first week in September. We'll call you before we cancel your room. I talked a little bit about waiting for elevators. That's going to be, even if everybody plans and does everything we say, we're still moving a lot of people in. There's going to be lines for the elevators. So make sure that you're planning. And some of the lines are going to be in the sun. I've marked what to expect. Heat, it's going to be hot. It's Merced in August. It'll be 100 degrees almost assuredly every day, maybe hotter. We've been having 103, 105 degrees here lately. We've had big fires to the north, and odds are we'll probably have more between now and move-in. So it's not unusual to have the forest fires here. So I generally recommend for move-in that you're wearing a mask anyway. You should wear a mask for move-in because of all the people in the proximity and the COVID transmission, but you might also want it too. You find it helpful for the smoke from these larger fires. It's going to be sun. You're going to find yourself in the sun. We're going to try to provide shade where we can, but there's going to be times where you're going to have to just be waiting with the cart in the sun. So plan appropriately. You might want long sleeves, a hat, sunblock, things that will help you be outside during that time. And did I mention the heat already? Because it's going to be hot. So just think about what it's going to, again, trying to minimize the number of trips. You can always bring more stuff back later, or you can ship some things. Like if you haven't bought stuff, you can always ship some things to yourself later using Amazon. We'll talk about how to get mail and everything, but you can ship things to yourself later instead of bringing it at move-in, which you might find a little bit easier. The reason I talk so much about the heat, the smoke, the sun, and the heat, again, is because one of the things I want to remind folks is we don't have any transportation for guests on campus. We don't have carts to move people around. So if you have someone that starts to get distressed or needs to take a break, and we don't have a way to just kind of move people around from the parking lots with a lot of walking. So just keep that in mind when you think about who's coming with you and what their role is going to be in your move-in process. Between August 18th, Thursday, and that Wednesday that starts classes, a lot of people are doing the same things at the same time. You're going to wake up the day after move-in, you're going to stretch, you're going to be like, oh, I'm going to go down. I slept in until 9:30, 10 o'clock. Let me go get some breakfast. You and like 500 other people are operating on the same schedule, particularly before classes start. And so you're going to find that experience for those first couple of days is just going to seem really crowded. That's just because we haven't distributed yet. But as classes start on that Wednesday, people are going to start going to work out in the morning. They're going to start getting into routine, and then the use of the areas will start to disperse a little bit. But just know, like, I've worked on 5 different campuses. The first week is always a lot of congestion because everyone's kind of doing the same thing at the same time because there's not really a lot of other competing interests or schedules or activities. So it's not an uncommon thing. After move-in, there's a couple of things I want to point out for first years and new transfer students. And really, if you're a second year continuing student, if you want to come, you got to participate in the bridge crossing in the past. On Monday, your RAs are going to have information about how you can go pick up your bridge crossing t-shirt. This is a campus tradition for everybody. Place on Tuesday. The chancellor will lead us all across begin the new year. For those of us that are already here, a part of the community, we'll be on the bridge to welcome and congratulate those who are joining our community as you cross the bridge and go up to the quad there on the academic side. That's a big day for us. Tuesday, so just plan on that. That'll be in the morning on Tuesday. Wednesday, we start classes. You'll have first floor meetings August 26th and through the 28th, that first weekend. These are going to be when your RA is going to be covering things like what to do if you're locked out, what are the fire and emergency procedures. These are good meetings to attend to make sure that you understand, not just like you get to meet who's living on your floor, but you get to figure out how to use and start accessing in the residence halls. And in that first week, we're going to have a fire drill in every community. One of the things that are important for us this year is to make sure that if the alarms are going off, you exit the building. The RAs are going to talk about where to go. There'll be information posted in your rooms about where your gathering points are, and just make sure that you're exiting the buildings when the alarms go off. All right, I'm going to pause there. We're going to open it up for Q&A.
Well, thank you very much, Scott. We've got a lot of great questions coming in through the Q&A. For those of you that have joined us after we started, please feel free to submit your questions through the Q&A portal in the bottom. We will do everything we can to address those questions throughout the remaining time of tonight's webinar. There are many duplicate questions, so you may not see your question get answered, but please look back through the question and answers of questions that we've already answered. Most likely you will find your answer to that question there. The first question I have, Scott, is can you go back to the slide with the full campus map for just a moment? And then while we're waiting on Scott to do that, I have seen, Scott talked about the current forest fires that we are experiencing in the area. And I've seen a couple questions come through about the smoke in the area. There are times when the winds do shift and blow the smoke from the fires into the valley. We have had that in the past. Fortunately, so far this fire season, we have been very fortunate to not experience too much smoke here in the valley. But that is something that we do have to be prepared for at any time. So just want to put that out there for everyone. There are, it's called the random, it's RAAN, and I apologize, I don't know exactly what the acronym stands for, but it's an air monitor that is in town that you can go to its website and see what the ozone is, as well as the PM 2.5, which is the particulate matter. And you can look at that website to see what the air quality level is. Our campus uses that to determine what safety measures that we need to take on a campus to keep everyone healthy and safe. And they do constantly evaluate that and make decisions based upon what the air forecast is. So when they do make decisions about that, that is put out in emails to the entire campus community as the situation changes. So Scott, if you could real briefly go through, so for the students that are on the north side of the campus, those are going to be students in Cathedral, Tenaya, Half Dome, Mariposa, Tuolumne, as well as what we call our Valley Terraces residence halls. After they park in Bellevue lot, pick up their keys, and they'll walk to their room to get their test. When they move their car, where can they move their car to if they're on the north side of campus?
Yeah, it's a great question. You'll be able to move your car. So if you're in Summits, so Tenaya, Cathedral, Half Dome, you can use the Scholars Lot, which is down here at the corner of Bellevue and Lake Road. That Scholars Lot area will be available for, there'll be some route traffic routing in there. You can park there to unload. You can also along Scholars Lane. So through campus, we don't normally allow traffic on Scholars Lane, but for move-in, we do allow limited traffic and limited parking along Scholars Lane. So there'll be 45-degree parking, which is nose into the curb parking where it's designated there to help folks get moved into those locations. When you exit, you'll exit along Ranchers Road. All the traffic flow is one way. So you'll come in Scholars, and even if you park in Scholars outside of Tenaya, which is at the far end of campus by Bobcat Field, if you exit, you still got to drive around the Scholars, turn, come around this way, and then come out on Ranchers Road. And then you can come back to the long-term parking.
Perfect. And then when you say parking on Scholars, Scott, actually, I'll go ahead. We will experience a lot of students moving into the residence halls on the north side of campus. So when we say parking, it's parking for just long enough to be able to unload your vehicle and then move your vehicle as soon as you are done unloading. So that way the next student can have an opportunity to park temporarily in that spot and have the same close walk opportunity as you had. Our parking and our enforcement officers are around, and they can issue you citations for parking in the zone longer than you're permitted to. So we cannot emphasize enough that if you are on the north side of campus, please unload your items, have someone from the family move your car to the long-term parking, and then walk back to your residence hall. We've seen several questions in the Q&A, Scott, about air fryers and rice cookers. Can you elaborate a little bit more on if those are permissible or not?
They are not. It's a very simple answer. We don't allow, you cannot have air fryers in the residence halls, and you cannot have rice cookers in the residence halls.
Perfect. So the only cooking device, for lack of a better term, that is permissible is the microwave under what wattage again?
900 watts, Energy Star rated or less.
Perfect. So I have a question about late move-in. So I've seen in the question and answer, some of our students may be traveling, maybe flying in, and may not get into the area until after the 5 o'clock time when the conference center shuts down. Where should those students go after those hours? And will they still be able to get carts and other items, et cetera, like that?
Yes, you'll be able to get your keys. You'll have access to there'll be a limited supply of moving carts. You'll do that at the resident services desk. It's right here down by the catquad in the middle of campus here. So you'll still arrive. You can park in this Bellevue lot and just kind of walk over here, get your keys, and then you can move your car to where it needs to go. But you'll get your keys here at the resident services desk. Between 5 and 8 p.m., you'll be able to get your keys from that desk. And then after 8 p.m., you'll have to contact there'll be numbers to call. That'll take you to the staff member on call if you arrive very late, which happens sometimes with international flights or those things. They come late. We're here at the housing.ucmerced.edu. There's a new link here right on the main page for fall 2022 move-in. You can also get to it from this menu where we've got information on move-in and the move-in volunteer program. But on this move-in page, there are maps that show where that better demonstrate where that. Here we go. So a lot of the information that we're talking about in the PowerPoint today are posted here as well, like what to bring, what to leave behind. There's information here on how to get your mail, which can be very helpful, like if you want to, and when to get your mail. I generally don't recommend shipping yourself anything that's going to arrive to campus before August 18th. Our service generally looks to see if you are moved in, and if you're not actually checked in, you may not show up as active in our database. So you might want to plan your packages to arrive after you do, or at the same time. But there's information here about mail, when we talk the early arrival information, and then there's the same maps that we've talked about. This takes you to kind of a big map for directions from lots of places in California to Merced, to UC Merced. This is the move-in parking map, and then this is our normal check-in. But then this is our after-hours check-in. So coming after 4:45 p.m. or before 8 p.m. There's a little map exactly where to go. So here's the conference center on this bigger map, and this little circles where you can get your keys after hours.
Perfect. Thank you for that, Scott. So another question that came in is many of our students weren't able to actually view some of our sample residence hall rooms during orientation. Is there anywhere or anyhow that they can view those a sample room before they move in?
Not in person. You can use the video tours that we have on our website. They may not have the exact furniture configurations that we have, but you can get a sense for what the rooms look like. If you go into on-campus housing and look at housing options, this section, and I'm going to apologize because it might load a little slowly, but in that housing options sections, you'll see links to each of the communities, and then each building either has video tours, there's floor plans, so there's a sense where you can get a sense of what the room is going to look like, what the layout of the room is going to look like. I think it's going to be different is that the specific room layout may be different in some of the video tours. The El Portal, the South Campus ones in particular, will show a lot of double room configurations that are going to be triples. but each of the beds, one bed will be lofted with desks and dressers underneath, and the other bed, 2 beds will be bunked with their desks and dressers outside. That's going to be the most common configuration. So I'm going to click on El Portal here, and then you can click on this and it'll take you through to information about the building. We don't really have any space open to do kind of large scale tours, but here you can see it's like a video tour of El Portal. You can see the floor layouts of each floor and then some of the amenities. This is what the building looks like from the outside. So hopefully that would be information that can help you before you arrive.
Perfect. Thank you for that, Scott. Another question that came in. So if a student is in a room that, say, the beds may not already be lofted, is there a process for them to the student to request those beds to be lofted?
You can, although one of the things, like if you lived on with us last year, we had this kind of, you put in a work, still how you would do it. So you'll use the work order process, which you can access on the housing website. So you can see if I come over here to resident education resources, down here you'll see a submit, how to a work order login here. You can use that system to submit a work order. You do need to be either on the campus network or you have to use the VPN to access it. So you'll learn about VPNs when you come here if you don't already. If that doesn't sound, that sounds strange. It's just a fancy way for saying you need to be, even if campus, you need to be on in the campus network. I bring that up because if you're using mobile data, your mobile data is not on the campus network versus when you're using your CatNet, your Cat ID, or your Net ID to come in through the Wi-Fi. You may see some issues there, but we've actually had a crew going through each of the rooms in South Campus to make sure that the rooms that are in lofted configuration should be there. Generally speaking, we wouldn't probably loft a double room if we needed to. If they're double rooms that have 2 beds on the floor, we're trying to get those beds up so the dressers can go underneath them. But if you do want to, you can always request a change to your room and it'll be evaluated through the work order system. In general, what they're checking to do is to make sure that whatever you're requesting isn't going to cause any conflict with egress or fire safety or block of fire sprinkler pattern. And if they can, and we have the parts, we'll make the change. If you were here last year on South Campus, you know that we brought in a lot of furniture at the last minute that we couldn't loft or we couldn't do things with. We've replaced all that furniture with furniture we're buying new from the vendor this year. So everything should loft and should work together. There'll be ladders on every bed. There'll be rails on every lofted bed. So it'll be a very different experience for those folks that are using those beds.
And perfect. And I guess, Scott, this is a perfect segue for the next question that I have. You see the picture there of the family moving in. You talked about it a little bit earlier. And for those of us that have been veterans to help a lot of these move-in weekends in, can you go in to emphasize a little bit more about what we actually recommend students to bring or the amount of items to bring?
Yeah, in this picture here, let's see, do some CSI, enhance, right? So you can see this cart here, right? This is a laundry cart. And you know, it's not particularly huge. You can see this microwave here, which I really hope this is a non-conforming microwave picture. You can see they're moving in a 1,000-watt microwave. So that's the first thing I point out as you zoom in on this picture. So, but this, you know, this stuff, like generally speaking, you want to try to keep this to maybe 2 or 3 of these carts if you can at max. You can check out as many as you need, but you want to try to keep your trip. If you can do 2 trips to move in with the number of carts that you can move, like, so if you're bringing like 3 or 4 people, they each going to take a cart, that's fine. But I always recommend just like pack light. You're going to get here and you're going to be sharing with people. You're going to have room that you don't expect, right? There's going to be space for you that you didn't think about, but you're also not going to have room that you might be planning for. So it's always good to pack light, and then you as roommates, if you all pack light, then you can kind of plan on how you want to expand your space as you get into it. And you can acquire things that are good fits for the environment instead of just kind of bringing all this stuff. So I generally recommend that you would bring only the amount of clothes that you would need for summer. And you might want to look at maybe like a 7 to 8 day kind of rotation for clothes, and including underwear and socks and stuff, plus any gym clothes that you might want. I mean, I was an athlete when I came here like many years ago, but not here, but when I went to college. And so like I had like a basketball and I had shoes, you know, and so it's like, I guess you want to be conscious about how much stuff you bring in, but you want to bring the things that you need to enjoy the place. Just be thoughtful about how much stuff you're going to bring. You don't necessarily have to bring all your winter stuff right away, particularly if you know you're going to go home on the holiday, but you might want to bring a jacket. You might want to bring a rain jacket or a windbreaker or something early on so you can manage the seasonal transition in September, because it'll still be warm during the day, but it'll get cool at night. But just try to keep you want to try to, like, one thing I would look at is, like, this microwave doesn't need to be in the box, right? That's another trip. You will get a couple of these trips to move, but these carts, really, you can't move them up the stairs very readily. So every one of those is a dedicated elevator trip, which is really where you're going to spend most of your time. So if you can minimize the number of cart trips you got to make by being selective and packing efficiently, you will do yourself and your colleagues a benefit, but mostly yourself. So, yeah.
Yes, many of us have been around many move-ins where we've seen a student go in with 5 or 6 of these carts, and they're wheeling 4 or more of the carts back to the car to take home. So thank you for that, Scott. Real briefly, I'm going to ask one of my fellow colleagues from our Students First Center. We do have a billing webinar coming up on August the 9th from 7 to 8 p.m. Where we will go more into depth into our UC Merced billing process and how that process works with our financial aid, et cetera. But I wanted to bring, since it is imperative to this webinar tonight, when will we know if our dorm is paid for already by our student aid? Because the student is worried about being able to pay for their other items, for example, their meal plan, their tuition fees, et cetera.
Hi, yes, I can answer that question. So by August 1st, students should have their fall bill posted. So after August 1st, a student should be able to see all of their tuition and fees and housing charges, as well as like the school insurance charges. And students should be able to view their authorized financial aid in their bill as well. So I would highly encourage students to keep an eye on their bill, but after August 1st, you should be able to see all of that information and your total amount due. Or if you are potentially going to be receiving a refund, you should be able to see that negative balance on there as well. If you have like any questions in regards to your bill or about your aid, if it's not showing up as authorized, definitely give our office a call. Or you can always come in person, and we definitely will be able to provide that necessary assistance to answer your questions.
Well, thank you very much for that one. And in the chat, Amy did put a link directly to that webinar where you can register for it. It's admitted.ucmerced.edu, and then click on summer webinars. You'll be able to find our past recordings as well as our last 2 webinars of this season. So Scott, we are coming to the end of our time. I know that we have had a lot of questions. We're not going to be able to get to all of them. But if a student has an approved emotional support animal, what documentation are they required to bring for that animal upon move-in?
If you have an approved emotional support animal, and the key word is approved, but the approval's got to come through UC Merced Student Accessibility Services. That's where you submit your documentation. That's true for any accommodation. We don't want you giving out medical information or kind of running around campus to various offices, right? So you just do it once with Student Accessibility Services. We will communicate to our office that you have an approved emotional support animal, and we will update your records to reflect that. And that information, we do share that information with hall staff. So they don't know anything about why you have an ESA. They just know you're approved to have an ESA and the type of ESA for which you're approved. And you're only allowed to have 1 ESA approval maximum. So just note that if you're looking to request.
Perfect. Thank you for that, Scott. And then for move-in, I've had a couple of questions. So I'm going to try to conglomerate several of the questions that we've received. So at move-in, how many guests, for lack of a better term, can the student bring with at move-in? And are they allowed to bring their own carts with them at move-in?
Yes, you can bring your own carts, and you can bring as many guests as you want. I would again point out the heat part, right? So, and particularly like in the past 2 years, we've had some restrictions on the number of folks who could come to campus because we're worried about COVID transmission. Again, I recommend that everybody that comes wears masks. I mean, this new strand of COVID seems to be particularly transmissible. So while we're all in big groups, masks are helpful. And our staff will be wearing them, even while we're indoors and stuff. So, but you can bring, there's no restrictions on who you can bring, but I generally recommend that you bring the folks that, who could walk 2 to 3 miles and stand around in the sun in 106-degree heat for 2 to 4 hours. And that should help you figure out your guest list. Either they're physically capable of it, or are they mentally capable of it, right? Those are two different things. And so a small child might be physically capable of doing all that, but mentally, they may not have the juice to make it all day. Same thing, you might have some, maybe you want to bring along grandma or grandpa or another close person who's a little bit older, but they may have the mental stamina for it, but they're not going to be able to cover that kind of distance up and down and pushing carts all day in the sun. So just kind of keep in mind that when you're curating your list, but there isn't really a restriction.
Perfect. Thank you for that, Scott. Just a few more questions. I know one that is before we end for the night. One question that has popped up is, are students able to pre-test prior to arriving to campus and show that pre-test as their proof of a negative test?
No, you need to take the test that we provide. The reason being is that even a day in advance, I mean, repeat daily testing is only effective to a certain point. And so we want to make sure that at the point of time you're arriving to campus that we have a test that is accurate, or at least have been administered at that time. So you're not required to do any testing before you come. If you want to check before you come to make sure you're here, you certainly can take the same kind of at-home tests that are freely available. You can get them free from online. I think from the federal government is shipping them out to folks, like 5 per house or something like that. But you can test what you want, but we still need you to take the test when you get here, because we've seen it time and time again during the pandemic. Somebody tests negative every single day until the day they don't, right? And that's it's the nature of testing. And you're going to learn all about that when you start studying here, if you're doing introductory science courses where you talk about accuracy and precision of testing, different testing methods that are used in biology in particular. But that's part of the limitations of those tests, which is why we're going to put the test on every bed. We're going to ask students to take it then, so that we know at that point in time exactly what's going on. Mm-hmm.
Perfect, thank you. Are beds first come, first serve in the residence hall with the roommates?
Yes, beds are first come, first serve. The only time where we would direct or adjust that is if we have a student who receives an accommodation after the fact, at which point we will communicate that with the folks in the room to make sure the student gets. I mean, sometimes students have injuries or needs to have a lower bunk, if only for a period of time. You would communicate that if that's the case. If not, everything else is first come, first serve on the beds.
Perfect. Are students allowed to bring small fans with them for the residence halls?
Yes, you can bring small fans with you to the residence halls.
Perfect. And then I believe what's going to have to be our last question for the night, because we are over time. When the students arrive to campus, the dining facilities will currently be open, correct?
Yes, dining will be open each day of move-in, and your student ID will work at the dining hall at move-in.
Perfect. And then the dining halls are open to students and their guests if they want to eat while they're on campus, correct?
Yes, each campus meal plan, of which students moving in are required to have one. Each of those comes with 3 guest passes that you could use. So you can choose to use those guest passes on your family while they're here if they want to eat with you. It's kind of a time-honored tradition that the family will usually take you out somewhere to go eat on your last day. I mean, I've seen that many times. You can certainly take them to the dining hall if you want, or you can save that to come maybe when it's not so correct. Because like I said, remember I said between August 18th and the 24th, a lot of people are going to do the same thing at the same time, right? That's our maximum number of people are on campus during that. So things on campus get a little busy. So folks go out out to the community and do some different things during that time. If you don't want to use the guest meals, they can always pay the price. They don't take cash, but they take card to go in there, and I think it's like $11.95 for lunch.
Yeah, I think recently I paid $12.88 for lunch in the pavilion. So
there you go.
So that does come to the end of our time. I want to give a big thank you to Scott, as well as all of my colleagues behind the scenes that have been answering all of your questions. We've had over 400 questions asked tonight. We have not been able to get all of them, but what I do recommend is this webinar will be posted online or admitted.ucmerced.edu, and then click on summer webinars here typically about 2 to 3 days after this webinar originally airs. There is one question that we have seen pop up here a lot, and that's referencing the blueprints that are online. With some of them saying the blueprints show that they're in a quad, but the blueprints say triple. The one thing that I do want to say is those blueprints have not been updated yet with our new rooming configurations. These configurations are new for the fall for us. We've been able to accommodate some more students in our residence halls. So what you may see online for the layout may not be exactly what your rooming assignment is. So did just want to address that real quick, as we have seen that come a lot. So again, thank you for attending tonight's webinar. We do have 2 webinars left in our I'm a Bobcat preparing for fall 22 season. August 9th at 7 p.m. we will have our fall billing 101 webinar. And August 11th is a very important webinar. It's a new one that we have not done before in the past. It is how to get an on-campus job and take the next steps in your career development. I can assure you this campus employs over almost 1,000 plus students on this campus. And we are extremely grateful for the students that do apply to work the jobs on the campus. We're going to go through everything you need to know as a student, how to find those jobs, where to apply for them, and everything like that. That webinar will be on August 11th from noon to 1 p.m. Like I said, all of our webinars are also recorded and put online. So if you miss it, don't worry. We have them posted online as soon as we possibly can. So with that, I want to thank you all for joining tonight's webinar. We look forward to seeing you here in just a few short weeks. It's hard to believe that move-in is right around the corner. For all of your housing questions, housing.ucmerced.edu has all of the information that Scott presented in this webinar, as well as their contact information as well. So on behalf of everyone here in the webinar, thank you very much. We look forward to seeing you here in the fall. Have a great rest of your evening.